Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Rain fell in fine needles across the deserted mall parking lot. The icy wind rattled the glass doors, and the atmosphere seemed charged with tension. Inside, Emily Carter, a young woman with piercing eyes and a calm but commanding demeanor, stood tall, observing the scene with a watchful eye. A few minutes earlier, an arrogant man, Marcus Reed, the manager of the store she had just visited incognito, had accosted her with obvious contempt. "You can't be here like this, you don't know how to follow the rules," he had thundered, almost shoving her with a firm hand. Shame had reddened Emily's cheeks, but she had remained silent, unwilling to reveal her true identity. She was no ordinary customer. Emily Carter was the owner of the entire channel, but for now, she was blending in, observing her employees' behavior and testing their integrity. And Marcus had just crossed the line. He didn't know he'd just slapped the woman who held all his contracts, all his benefits, all his privileges. In the reflection of a shop window, Emily saw his fist raised, ready to strike back if necessary, but she simply smiled coldly, an icy glint in her eyes. Revenge would not be immediate. No, it would be smarter, more relentless, and public Marcus was about to learn, the hard way, that beneath her modest exterior lay a woman capable of destroying his reputation and his empire with the snap of a finger. The crash of something falling echoed through the store. Emily walked away, leaving the man in his confusion and arrogance. But deep inside her, a single thought burned: justice was going to be served, and she would savor every second. Marcus Reed prided himself on his authority. For years, he had run the store with a mixture of arrogance and subtle brutality. To him, every employee, every customer, was merely a pawn on his chessboard. But today, his arrogance would encounter an invisible wall. Emily Carter entered the store early in the morning, wearing a light disguise, dark glasses, a long coat, her hair tied back quickly. She wanted to observe Marcus without him suspecting anything. She wanted to see the true face of his manager, the one who believed himself untouchable. Just a few minutes after his arrival, Marcus spotted him near the counter. He frowned and approached, a look of disdain on his face. "Excuse me, miss, but you can't stay there, you're blocking the way." His voice was firm, almost condescending. Emily looked up calmly, trying not to show any reaction. I just wanted to check out a product." Marcus took a step forward, his arrogance palpable. "It's not about the product, it's about the rules. Here, we play by the rules." Then, in an impulsive and completely inappropriate gesture, he placed his hand on her shoulder and shook it lightly. "You must learn some respect, miss." Emily felt the heat of shame singe in her cheeks, but instead of retaliating, she remained motionless. It was then that Marcus, in an excess of authority, raised his hand and slapped her. The room seemed to stop for a moment. The other customers and employees, surprised, looked down, shocked by the impulsive act. The sound of the slap echoed through the room, and Emily recoiled slightly. But beneath that facade of calm, something powerful was awakening, the icy anger of someone who will never allow himself to be humiliated with impunity. She took a deep breath, the slap still burning on her cheek, and said softly but firmly, "You just made a huge mistake." Marcus raised his eyebrows, a mocking smile on his face. "Oh, really? And what can you do against me?" Emily didn't answer. She took out her phone, discreetly took a photo of the scene, and walked away, leaving Marcus in his blind trust. He didn't know he'd just crossed paths with the store owner, a woman whose power would soon be revealed in a dazzling way. As she left, Emily muttered to herself, "Every action has its consequences, and yours is coming faster than you think, Marcus." The next morning, Marcus Reed was still proud of himself. To him, the slap he gave that insistent customer was just a minor incident, a demonstration of his authority. He had no idea that every action he had just taken had just triggered a silent storm. Emily, for her part, was already at her desk, in the owner's seat, the one Marcus had never dared to approach. Her presence in the store wasn't just a casual visit, she had taken care to check every detail. Every employee, every security camera, every internal procedure, she knew everything. Marcus had just shown himself vulnerable, and that vulnerability was about to be exploited with precision. She opened her computer and began to compile a complete file. The slap, the employee's reaction, Marcus's management mistakes, everything would be recorded. But she didn't intend to react harshly right away. She wanted the lesson to be public and unforgettable. Later that morning, Emily walked by Marcus incognito while he was explaining procedures to a new employee. Her icy gaze met his, and Marcus, without understanding, felt a slight discomfort. He mistakenly thought it was his imagination. But Emily knew exactly the effect it caused. Every move she made, every calculated smile, was a piece of the puzzle for her revenge. At noon, she called one of her trusted associates, an attorney, an in-house consultant. "We have a problem with our manager in Midtown. He's out of control. I want everything checked discreetly. His actions must be documented." That afternoon, Emily went to the break room, where Marcus was chatting loudly with some employees. She sat at the far end of the table, feigning interest in the coffee. He still didn't recognize her. And yet, with every word he spoke, he revealed more of his own arrogance, himself writing the map of his future downfall. Finally, Emily left the store, leaving behind a satisfied but unconscious Marcus. He thought he had won the battle. In reality, he had just played the game on your opponent's field. That evening at home, Emily looked at the photo of the slap on her phone. A cold smile tugged at her lips. "Every humiliation must be paid for, and I'm going to make sure you understand what that means," Marcus read. The following Monday, the store appeared to be operating normally. But beneath this ordinary facade, a subtle change was taking place. Emily, still incognito, had launched the first stage of her revenge. Every action Marcus took would now be observed, analyzed and used against him. That morning, she had asked a trusted employee to test Marcus. A small, seemingly trivial incident, a delivery error. Marcus, true to his impulsive nature, reacted angrily in front of customers and employees, shouting and pointing. Emily, hiding behind a shelf, mentally noted every word, every gesture, every humiliation he inflicted on others. Then came the meeting with the supplier. Marcus was used to playing the bully, reminding everyone of his superior position. But that day, Emily had discreetly informed the supplier of certain management problems, delays, inventory errors, minor embezzlements that she knew to be true. The suppliers, cautious, began to question his authority. Marcus immediately felt a tension he didn't understand. Later, in the conference room, Emily made an undercover call to her in-house lawyers, who began preparing official notes on Marcus's failings. Everything was planned. Every past and present humiliation of Marcus was going to be transformed into a irrefutable proof of his incompetence. As Marcus continued his day, he began to notice small anomalies. An employee avoided his gaze, a curious customer seemed to know details he had never shared, a growing unease was setting in, but he couldn't put his finger on the cause. At the end of the day, as he was leaving the store, he passed Emily briefly in the parking lot. She gave him an almost imperceptible smile, and for the first time, Marcus felt a shiver of worry. At home, Emily put away her notes and reread the slap file. Every humiliation, every mistake, every reaction from Marcus would serve to build a spectacular and unforgettable revenge. His plan was beginning to take shape, and Marcus, unknowingly, had just walked into a trap from which he would not emerge unscathed. She muttered to herself. "The game is just beginning, and you, Marcus, will never know what hit you until it's all over." By Friday morning, Marcus Reed was already in a bad mood. He'd noticed the week's minor anomalies, but couldn't figure out where they came from. The employees seemed more cautious, more distant. Some customers were asking questions he didn't understand. And most of all, this mysterious woman seemed to be watching him without him being able to recognize her. Emily, she, had planned the next move. She knew that to hit hard, she had to hit where Marcus thought he was invincible, his reputation and authority in public. As soon as the store opened, she pretended to ask for information from an employee, right next to Marcus. The employee, following her instructions, accidentally mentioned Marcus's minor mistakes in front of several customers and colleagues. Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He knew this would humiliate him, but he had no way of controlling the situation. Then Emily approached the counter, feigning inattention, and made a seemingly innocuous comment about the store's management. The words were carefully chosen to sow doubt in the minds of anyone who heard them. Marcus tried to retort with authority, but his answer seemed awkward, hesitant, less convincing than usual. The afternoon was even more cruel for him. Emily had taken care of prepare a small orchestrated incident. A loyal customer mistakenly received a damaged product. Marcus was forced to intervene in front of everyone. In his attempt to resolve the problem, he lost his temper, shouted, and displayed all his impatience and arrogance. Emily, in the shadows, watched every move with a cold smile. Every humiliation inflicted on Marcus was a silent victory, but deliciously satisfying. As the store closed, Marcus stood alone, shaken. He sensed something was wrong. His employees avoided his gaze, the customers seemed strangely trusting, and this woman, he had a feeling she knew something. But what? He couldn't guess. At home, Emily reread her notes and adjusted her plan for the following days. She knew the climax was approaching. Marcus would soon discover that the slap he had given was only the beginning of a disaster he had never imagined. She whispered, a cold smile on her lips. Soon you will know that power is not measured by arrogance, but by patience and intelligence. And I, Marcus, am the master of the game. Saturday morning, the store was busier than usual. Customers were coming and going, some regulars, others curious. Marcus Reed stood behind the counter, confident in his newfound authority, but Emily's shadow still loomed large. Emily had carefully orchestrated her presence that day. She had invited, under the pretext of an anonymous inspection, a regional representative and a few influential clients, all carefully chosen to witness Marcus's downfall without him realizing it. The first incident occurred almost immediately. An employee, following Emily's secret instructions, handed Marcus a report containing small strategic errors. Marcus, in his usual pride, corrected the errors in front of the representative and the customers, shouting and pointing. Every word, every gesture, was captured by observant eyes, and each reaction made him appear more arrogant and less competent. Then came the key moment. Emily positioned herself near the counter, subtly, and asked a question that seemed innocent but was carefully calculated. Marcus, can you explain why some customers receive damaged products despite your checks? The influential clients and the regional representative turned to him, waiting for a clear answer. Marcus, taken aback, stammered out a few awkward apologies. His face flushed. Emily stood motionless, seemingly listening innocently, but every detail of her posture, every discreet smile, seemed to silently taunt him. Then Emily turned slightly toward the representative and whispered something quietly. What Marcus didn't know was that she had prepared a small confidential file on his past mistakes, and the representative had just quietly received this information. Marcus's face went from anger to incomprehension when he saw the representative's gaze harden. At that precise moment, a customer dared to ask another embarrassing question, revealing a problem Marcus thought he had under control. He lost his temper, exploded in anger, and shouted in front of everyone. Emily, still hiding behind a discreet smile, noted every detail. This scene would later be used for show Marcus's blatant incompetence, while keeping his identity secret for the time being. As it closed, Marcus sat alone in his office, trembling inside. For the first time, he felt the dull fear of being overtaken, unable to understand what was happening. At home, Emily reread her plan. The time to reveal her true identity was approaching. Soon, Marcus would understand that he wasn't dealing with just an arrogant customer, but with the owner of the store, and the one who controlled his entire career. She whispered, with a cold smile on her lips. Every humiliation prepares you for the final revelation, Marcus. And believe me, it will be unforgettable. Monday morning. The store seemed normal to the customers, but Marcus Reed knew something was wrong. Over the past week, his usual confidence had been shaken. Every employee avoided him, every gesture seemed observed, and every word misinterpreted. And this woman, he had a feeling she pulled the strings in the shadows. Emily, on the other hand, moved methodically. She knew that to crush Marcus, his fall had to be complete and irreversible. That day, she decided to strike on his professional pride. At the weekly staff meeting, Emily positioned herself incognito in the room, ready to take notes. Marcus began his speech, boasting of his successes and perfect decisions. But the employee Emily had prepared in advance, Tim, dared to ask a pointed question about logistics and sales, a mistake Marcus himself had made the previous week. Marcus stammered. He tried to justify his choices, but each explanation sounded hollow and implausible. Emily watched silently. Every hesitation Marcus made, every blush on his face, every tiny movement betrayed his nervousness. The climax came when the regional representative, who had been discreetly briefed by Emily, intervened to ask for clarification on issues Marcus thought he had under control. His clumsy and contradictory answers revealed his incompetency to a professional audience. The silence fell in the room, heavy and crushing. Marcus left the meeting, his head bowed, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Every gesture he had made to appear strong had backfired, fear began to set in, and with it, paranoia. At home, Emily reread her notes and smiled. The next step would be decisive. She would prepare for a confrontation direct but public, finally revealing his true identity. Marcus would then see the owner whom he had humiliated first physically, then professionally, and will understand that his whole career was in his hands. She murmured, satisfied. The end is coming, Marcus. And this time, there will be no escape. The following Thursday, the store was particularly busy. Emily knew that this day would be crucial. She was going to come out of the shadows and confront Marcus, while maintaining complete control of the situation. She entered incognito, as always, but this time her objective was clear: to orchestrate a moment when Marcus would be exposed in front of everyone, unable to defend herself. She had prepared her evidence, her witnesses, and her arguments. Every detail had been meticulously planned. Marcus, behind the counter, noticed her arrival. Something about her intrigued him, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. The week of minor humiliations had unsettled him, and he felt this mysterious woman had a role in his loss of control. Emily approached slowly, her gaze piercing. She placed her bag on the counter and, in a calm but firm voice, said, "Marcus Reed, we need to talk, now." The employees and a few customers present looked up, surprised by Emily's authoritative tone. Marcus, confused, replied arrogantly, "And who are you to give me orders?" Emily took off her sunglasses and dropped her coat, revealing the glint of the badge. Store owner. The shock was immediate. Marcus paled as he realized that the woman he had slapped and humiliated was none other than the owner whom he believed to be unknown. You're the owner," he stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. Emily stepped forward again, each step measured to assert her authority. "Exactly. And you just crossed all lines. Your unacceptable behavior in front of your employees, your customers, and towards me, it must stop immediately." She pulled out the file she had prepared, photos, testimonies, evidence of her mistakes and her arrogance. Each document fell onto the counter, a stark reminder of all the humiliations Marcus had inflicted. The customers and employees present watched, stunned. Marcus tried to speak, to justify himself, but each word seemed weaker than the last. His arrogance had been pulverized, replaced bisham and incomprehension. Emily concludes, "I see. You have been arrogant, rude, and violent, toward me and those you were meant to protect. From now on, your decisions will be monitored. Any failure to do so, and you will be replaced immediately. Understood?" Marcus nodded, stunned. He had just understood the extent of his error, the slap he had given, the week of humiliation, everything now came back to him with tenfold force. Emily straightened, her gaze sharp, and whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning of your lesson, Marcus. You're going to learn what it means to humiliate the wrong person." The day after the confrontation, Marcus Reed arrived at the store with a strange feeling. He knew now that his position was no longer secure and that every move would be scrutinized. The employees eyed him with suspicion mixed with silent satisfaction, and the regular customers seemed more attentive than ever. Marcus was now trapped by his own arrogance. Emily, meanwhile, watched from a discreet office. She had prepared a series of meetings and surprise check-ins, orchestrated to put Marcus in a difficult position at every moment. Every past mistake, every inappropriate behavior, every impulsive gesture would be used to undermine his authority. The first stop of the day was an incident in the electronics aisle. A customer demanded a refund for a defective item. Marcus tried to handle the situation as he always did, with anger and authority. But Emily had previously briefed the employee on how to document the conflict and record every detail. The customer, impressed by the employee's efficiency and diplomacy, made a mental note of Marcus's clumsiness. Later, a surprise inventory inspection revealed several minor errors Marcus had never noticed. Emily discreetly guided the inspector to the anomalies and left Marcus to try to explain them away. His explanations seemed weak and incoherent. The employees and customers present watched intently, now understanding that the arrogant man behind the counter was not infallible. During the lunch break, Emily subtly circulated some information about Marcus's mistakes to influential clients. The rumors, perfectly orchestrated, spread quickly, further damaging his reputation. Marcus was beginning to feel the crushing weight of public humiliation, realizing that every impulsive move of his would now be analyzed and used against him. At the end of the day, Marcus sat alone in his office, exhausted, humiliated, and unable to regain his authority. Emily, standing back, reread her notes and smiled with satisfaction. The next step in his revenge would be a total humiliation, orchestrated in front of everyone, which would definitively mark the end of his arrogance. She muttered to herself. The lesson is coming to an end, Marcus. Soon everyone will know who the real mistress is here, and you will have no way to defend yourself. It was a Friday afternoon, and the store was particularly busy. Emily knew the decisive moment had arrived. Marcus was going to suffer the complete revelation of his incompetence and arrogancy in front of everyone, employees and customers gathered. She had organized a general meeting, pretending it was a routine checkup for all employees and the presence of a regional representative. Marcus, unsuspectingly, took his place in the center of the room, ready to shine in front of the audience. He had no idea he was about to bait a target of a perfectly calculated plan. Emily entered calmly, removing her coat one last time to reveal her owner's badge. The room instantly fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Marcus felt his heart race that the woman he had slapped and humiliated was the owner. She stepped forward slowly and spoke in an icy voice. Marcus Reed, we need to talk about your behavior. Not just toward me, but toward your employees and our customers. Your mistakes and arrogance have been documented and observed, and today, everyone will see the reality. Emily pulled out the complete file, photos, recordings, testimonies, past incidents. She displayed them on the projector, revealing every humiliation inflicted by Marcus and every mistake he had made in managing the store. The employees and customers present were able to see, for the first time, all the evidence of his incompetence and arrogance. Marcus tried to protest, to justify himself, but his voice was weak and hesitant. Each word seemed to accentuate his shame. The whispers and critical looks in the room further unsettled him. He realized that his reputation was now destroyed in front of everyone. Emily concludes, with implacable authority. From now on, your decisions will be monitored. Any attempt at inappropriate behavior will result in immediate sanctions. And remember, the next time you think about humiliating someone, make sure you know who you have in front of you. Silence reigned for a few moments. Marcus, flushed with shame, looked down, unable to answer. Emily calmly left the room, leaving behind a completely humiliated Marcus. Victim of his own arrogance and lack of discernment. That day, Emily had one total victory. His patiently orchestrated revenge was now complete. She whispered to herself, a cold smile on her lips. The lesson is learned. And believe me, Marcus, no one will ever forget this day. The following weeks were hell for Marcus Reed. Every move he made was watched, every decision scrutinized. The employees, now aware of his past arrogance, no longer feared him. They obeyed the directives of Emily, the true owner, with silent but determined loyalty. Marcus tried several times to regain control, but each attempt failed. His speeches were corrected before he could even speak, and his mistakes were documented and presented in detail. Even influential clients, who had witnessed the public humiliation, were cautious and distant. Marcus understood then that his reputation was irreparably destroyed. Emily, for her part, had regained complete serenity. The slap he had given her, that humiliation he had thought insignificant, had been transformed into a perfect plan for revenge, and justice. She didn't just humiliate him, she restored order, showed her authority, and reminded everyone that indiscriminate arrogance always pays off. One day, Marcus was summoned to the main office. Emily greeted him calmly and said these words with icy coldness. "Marcus, your role here is now limited. You are still allowed to work, but any important decisions must be approved. Your arrogance and impulsive behavior will no longer be tolerated." Marcus lowered his head, aware that his professional life had just changed forever. He had underestimated Emily, and the lesson was etched in his memory forever. Emily turned back to the window, looking out at the city stretching into the distance. A sense of justice and power washed over her. The slap, the contempt, the humiliations, everything had been turned into a total victory, not by violence, but by patience, intelligence, and strategy. She murmured to herself, a satisfied smile on her lips. "Always remember, Marcus Reed, you must never humiliate someone without knowing their true power. And I am not just someone. I am mistress of this part." The store was thriving again, under his absolute control, and Marcus, reduced to a secondary and monitored role, understood that arrogance and blind brutality never lead anywhere when they clash with patience and intelligence. Emily had won. And that victory would remain engraved in everyone's memory, an eternal reminder that beneath a modest appearance can be hidden a force capable of overthrowing the powerful.